All right, time for another Dude Diligence podcast or YouTube cast or whatever the heck medium this ends up going out on. Today, I'm joined by my old friend Brian, and by old I mean not in age. I think we've known each other 3 years now. So, anyways, Brian, how's it going, man? Who are you and what do you do?
Not too bad. Well, thanks for having me on here. As I was mentioning earlier, yeah, because I'm in Mexico, it's nice to have somebody to talk to once in a while. We can get into that later. But originally, I come from Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada, and I've got a doctorate in social sciences, and I'm a management consultant, and I work with companies and people working on performance for leaders. I do research around this, and I travel a lot. And one of the things I do, I was thinking about this earlier. Do I identify myself as a motorcyclist or not? But I am. I've always ridden a motorbike, and I've done long trips. The longest one was 26 months through 16 countries in the Americas. And, I've got a company. It's called the MD Moto Group, and it operates on the mnemonic acronym ARIA, which is the solo singer in an opera. And it stands for Adventure, Research, Investing, and Advising. And so right now we're in Mexico. We've got some projects down here. We've been here for a while, and suffering the sun and the beaches and whatever also comes along with that. So
Cry me a river with the sun, because it's been rainy the last 3 days here. But outside of that, well, and you said you've been kind of lacking being able to just speak English with people. So the projects that you're doing in Mexico are English projects, or you're doing them remotely with people elsewhere, I guess, doing the teams?
So both. Yeah, we've got some stuff that we do virtually and some projects that we do locally. But my role tends to be as a subject matter expert, but I have to get it translated because, like in any language, every area or discipline has its own, dictionary, basically, right? Like you end up with a bunch of jargon and language that's either unknown to others of the same language or needs more articulation. And now I'm trying to do that with Spanish speakers. Or even if they know some English, they're not going to know that particular lexicon of information in the language, right? So I have to get it translated, or I use a translator to do that. So it's a real challenge. It's new for me, and it's a challenge, but it's what we're doing.
Are you using humans right now for the translation, or are you starting to explore like AI? Because some of this real-time translation stuff must be interesting. I don't have reason to test it recently, but I gotta think by now it's got to be near real time, I think, right?
Yeah, there's like Google Translate. Yeah, Google Translate. I've got it on my phone. It's good in a pinch. You sort of have to train people to use it, right? It's intuitive. It's simple. But it tends to be one of those sort of on the street, you need something very specific and everyone's speaking quickly. And then it becomes useful because it slows people down, and it's near real time, but it's a process. So if you're facilitating something, I don't know, it's kind of better when you have a translator that can sort of repeat what you've said and then articulate it over. Right? Sort of go back and forth. People tend to also take more time, it seems. So for example, if I'm explaining something and then the translator says it, they will think about it more. Whereas on the Google Translate or something, they're just, screaming at the phone kind of thing, right? And then smashing the button, and they're not sort of reflecting a little bit on what question they need to ask the translator, because they know it's going to then be converted and then come back, like a multiple telephone call or something like that. So it's I don't think it's there yet, or I haven't seen any tech that I can use that takes me there.
Yeah, I wonder though, dude. You got me curious. I might have to, because I don't really have reason to translate other than I'm very curious in translating my dog, my pet. So, and I've been watching that space because there's all sorts of interesting things going on there. So
It's
if they
coming,
do
right?
that with my dog, surely I can do that. So many interesting things there. One, you're relying on a human translator, so you're still watching the person talking and probably trying to pick up nuances of like their energy and their attitude when they're talking, right? So you're trying to pick up that, but then it's being translated by another human that's going to add their own filter to it, where they're going to try to pick the right words, and it might not actually be. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. I know in Teams, and I gotta assume lots of platforms you can do transcription real time now, and I think it will also do translation of that transcription real time. So as the person talking to you, you're seeing the inflection in their face, you're hearing with both ears, so you got the intuition tapped in, and then you're reading what they're saying, and then at least you can ask them directly, like, okay, it said that you like porcupines. Is that what you actually said? I think the tooling might be there. I almost would assume it's there. You just need to find it, because what I saw even 3 years ago informs me that it probably is. So it's just a matter of finding the right tooling. But
So what you'll find, for example, with this podcast, if you have that transcription system and you have it all transcribed and then you go over the notes afterwards, it's really dirty, right? Like you got to clean up a lot. It does not, on Teams anyways, I use it for Teams quite a bit because I'll do interviews for research and I transcribe everything. And then I have to go over it, word by word, and what a mess. I mean, it captures 70%, maybe 80%. Well, I mean, it captures all of it, but maybe 70 or 80% is accurate, and the rest is something else that you have to sort of fill in. Which, in English, of course, you can fill that in. You can say, well, clearly they meant this, or I think they meant that, and then you go back to the video transcript. But that's a fundamental challenge here. But you can imagine that if you're facilitating something that you know about specifically, and you're having it translated, and somebody comes back with a kind of question, or they say something, you probably already know that they don't know, right? Because of your technical knowledge, that, okay, they asked the wrong question. Or they thought it was this. We clearly did not articulate it right for them to think that, because you already know what it should look like, what the picture should look like. So if they're coming back with something else, they're just not getting it. So there's that. But in day-to-day stuff, talking to somebody on the street or whatever, context, just like, I don't have a clue what context is for the most part.
I use a tool lately called Otter AI. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I signed up for it and I was like, oh, that's neat. And then I was like, I'm not gonna pay for it. And then I immediately realized I missed it. But I don't use it all the time. It's just kind of like knowing that my transcriber is in the meeting with me, because you actually invite Otter to your Teams meeting or your Zoom meeting, and it just sits there and it just says Sean's Otter AI, and it announces itself in the meeting. It's here. I'm here to take notes. But what you get afterwards is, and it keeps improving. Like every week, I'm like, oh, it's just getting better and better. But it summarizes your meeting. Even it's weird. It's only in the phone app, not in the browser for some reason. It creates a word cloud afterwards too, so it actually it highlights which words were on the surface, which is really conversational later, I find. Like, did you realize we talked about this the most? Because that wasn't what we came to the meeting for, but clearly it just kept bubbling back up to the surface. I don't know if it does translation, because all of my meetings have been in English, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's probably actually one of their. I don't know. Maybe check it out. Otter.ai. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I wrote it down because even the research I'm doing, it's all in English. So anything that can help with that, transcription, or even analysis, right? Now, word clouds are really useful
Mhm.
because the volume of words can have meaning
Yeah,
depending on their context.
like pattern recognition, just even in the context of the chat. Hmm.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and it's come along like it's come so far so quickly,
Hmm.
right? Really, like we're
That's the
talking
scary
like
part is it's just getting faster, and it's working while we're sleeping. So
yeah, it doesn't yeah, it's super quick. I know I play with Bing and then Google Bard and stuff, and
mhm.
Bing has to think a lot, and Google Bard's just like it
Oh,
just something. It's super fast. It seems for me, but these guys they lie to you. He's, they're people are I keep seeing these social media posts. Everyone's afraid of AI or
yeah.
whatever. I'm not much of a humanist, so if AI wants to take over, great. We've got a apocalyptic battle on our hands, but
Well, none of,
uh,
none of us have the energy to actually take it on if it takes over. Like we just don't have enough. It'll just keep going, right? So, you know what I do? Whenever I'm using Chat GPT, I'm always training it. Like I'll just tell it, this isn't correct based on my experience. Here's something, and it'll like thank me and oh thanks, I'll add that to my. Like I feel like I'm making a positive contribution, not trying to influence, but just like no, this Prince did not record that album. He did this one, like just even little things like that, right? Just like if
yeah,
I can contribute that way. Yeah, AI
yeah,
is an interesting thing. Um, a lot of folks I talk to, and I definitely went through that scary part. But to me, it's an amazing creator tool. Like a lot of folks, artists, musicians, I'm finding are like, oh, it takes away creativity, and I'm like, no, it really doesn't. It's just helping you combine your tastes into something, and then it's just a reflection of you by asking it to do some of the heavy work. Um, so yeah, it's I'm kind of excited about it, but I do wonder, like art itself. I don't know where it's gonna go, other than if you don't what is it? If you can't beat them, join them or whatever. I'm kind of in the I don't think we can beat this one, so I might as well join it and do my best to live in harmony with it. So
yeah. Well, I heard recently. I forget where this quote came from, but it said AI is not going to replace humans. Humans that use AI will replace the humans that don't.
yeah,
Something like this, right? And I think that's fairly telling. At the end of the day, it just takes a big solar flare or something, and we're back to like skinning cats and eating worms or whatever, right? Uh, so I
that's a rabbit hole I assume we'll go down. Like supply chain and all that stuff. Like, yeah, these solar flares are expected. Um, GPS, why there's a space force to protect satellites from disruption from other countries, and like it's
yeah.
nuts. So where do we go from there? But although maybe just what you said there remind me of something I heard the other day, which is if you're not useful, then you're just not going to be needed. So be useful, and if that means being creative in a new way, I think that's ultimately all we can strive for. I kind of like to think I'm useful at times, but I think these times it's the human elements of trying to offer something new, whereas other people will be useful in different ways. Some people are just useful driving a truck. It's a necessary skill, and they love that, and that's great for them. So, but it's those that are in the doing things that could be automated by something digital. Make sure you're being useful. So.
Well, and yeah, the creative space is important ultimately
Mhm.
because we haven't gotten anywhere as humans by sort of logically stepping uh, in a particular path. It's
Mhm.
it's by accident. It's by innovation, which is notoriously uh, prone to failure. These kind of things, right? So AI, I think. I mean, what I appreciate about the chat box, Chat GBT, or whatever the other ones are, yeah, it's not that they lie to me, because they do, because I check on everything, right?
Mhm.
Um, But for example, I'll be looking up something and I have to, like you said, you got to train it. So I'll have to tell it what it needs to do all the time. And it doesn't respond well. Like, when I want it to find a piece of information, I don't want it to plagiarize it, but it does, right? It
Mm-hmm.
plagiarizes a lot of stuff because I go and check. And so I'll tell it, please use a particular style, use your quotations, basic stuff, right? Like if you're just going to copy and paste it, tell me that that's what you're doing, right? And it doesn't for some reason, which I don't understand the programming behind it in the sense that I don't know why they can't just do that, which blows me away. Like, where did you get these bits?
Mm-hmm.
And it's as simple in text-based language. It's a quotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I took this bit from here, and then I told you a story using that bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which it can't do. But what it does, amazingly, is it finds stuff that I would never find, or it would take me hours or days or weeks to find.
Mm-hmm.
Searching and reading and rejecting and this kind of thing, right? So I can find stuff that's just like, boom, all of a sudden I have these references, I have a place to look, and then I can go and double check to see how much it's lied to me, right? Or how accurate it was, or if it understood context, these kind of things. And it does okay, but it's not enough to be trustable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's that finding portion. It's that
Mm-hmm.
getting the ball rolling sooner than I normally would have that I find really useful with the AI. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think that's powerful
It's
of
I
it.
guess it's the quality of your questions for it too, right? And then keep egging it on. Like, that's good, but can you do it like this? And it always comes back and apologizes. Oh, I'm sorry, Sean. Now I understand. One thing in ChatGPT that I noticed, it was only in the last week, but it's like now I can actually precede it the things that I used to always say, like write a blog post about this, write it to a fifth grade reading level, sprinkle in the word dude, that kind of stuff. Throw in some emojis, acknowledge him a drummer. Now you can just seed it. So now it comes back and it's always like, it'll say like, hey, Sean, I mean, dude, here's something for you to get in rhythm. And so like already it's like talking to him like between that and sex robots and Oculus, like relationships are done. I don't have to argue with anyone more. This beautiful chatbot is going to be talking to me tell me exactly what I want to hear, and so I think it's going to be nuts going forwards, right? I've had this conversation twice this week, but like in China, I can't remember how many years it was, but when they were actually restricting births, right? Like a family could have one person, and so for a while there was females being aborted, right? And so I think there's like 30 million more men than women in a certain age range, and so they had to create sex robots to keep these guys from going crazy. So the sex robot business has got a huge head start. Like it's not like they're just starting to work on it; it's more like they're really refining it. So if you got the physical touch and it's talking to you in the way you like to be talked to, and it knows knows the things to say, and then you throw in an Oculus, so you're seeing whatever you want to see. Like, you think dating is bad now, or people are just like swiping left and right? They're just gonna be like, I'm not even dating. Like, it's just. I think it's. I don't know. The fact that I've been married 28 years is feels like we are definitely unicorns at this point because I just don't see that kind of brass ring stuff happening much more. So I'm worried about that. So
Well, you might have just explained how AI eventually takes over humans, right? Really, if you think about it. So no matter how much diversity we try to plug into programming, men are the bulk or the lion's share of these STEM sort of careers globally, for sure. And of course, it's the male of the species that is the primary consumer of porn. And so AI can literally just cater to that and will exponentially grow its power through that manipulation or whatever it's going to do. I mean, you're right. There's something in there, and then it could, it starts to make the female of the species less required.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people on the planet, anyways, and you know, as it reduces, the population growth is slowing.
Mm-hmm.
So reduction would only occur, and those males would still continue to contribute to the survival of the AI. Which, because there's evolutionarily, we look at, for example, cows, right? Like humans have kind of wiped out what is it, 60% of all species on the planet now. We've it's the sixth extinction or something they're calling it.
Okay.
Something like this, right? Like we've actually done a lot of damage there.
Mm-hmm.
We spread, right, and whatever, we take up ecosystems.
We're the virus. Yeah. Yeah. Keep
Right.
going.
But okay, but look at cattle. I mean, evolutionarily, cattle are brilliant. They're like a keystone, because what have they done? Evolution requires, procreation. It requires that the species is able to continue on and on, right? But you get something like a woolly mammoth or whatever, something that we've killed off because we don't need. Cows have found a way to be needed by humans, so they get to continue in an evolutionary fashion, in sort of a behind the scenes unconscious way. They've been able to continue their species because they've attached themselves to humans, which makes them really a very broad intelligence in some way. So if we think of that from an evolutionary perspective, and then we look at AI as how it evolves, and if we go back to this porn thing, right? And AI sort of attaches itself to the male species and says, program me this and I'll give you that. It's kind of becomes like the cow. Now, does it eventually take over? I don't think cows are going to take over.
No.
Um,
Utterly impossible.
Bravo.
That's so interesting. So I've never. So you made me think of a couple of things there. So one, cows have actually aligned themselves with humans to exist. So they actually want to become a Big Mac because that helps them continue. So that's interesting. I was reading or saw something about dogs the other day and how dogs, and it was talking about one kind of dog. I forgot which one. One of the sort of Alaskan winter dogs, where they're closer to wolves still. Dogs have been trying to evolve to, like, the reason dogs smile is to be friendly with humans. And there's some breeds of dogs that don't do that. So they're still in the wolf side of things. And so dogs have been aligning themselves with humans more and more over time. And so lately I've been like experimenting with that and like smiling at dogs. And as soon as I go up to a dog and smile, it loses its fucking mind. Like I'll be like they're walking towards me, and the dog just is all of a sudden jumping on me and excited, and all I did was smile. And whereas before, I guess I would just always like be talking to the human, but if I interacted with the dog, it was just all of a sudden came online. It was really interesting, and yeah. So cows want to become Big Macs, is I think what you're saying, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, not consciously, but
Yeah.
sort of on the bigger scheme. Now, the interesting thing, so you said that about dogs, right? So if you smile, a dog knows, oh, I'm being smiled at, right? Because they want to adapt.
Yeah.
But then for cat people out there, we all know that with the cats, you can smile at a cat. They don't care. They don't care. You have to do an eye squint to tell the cat that, you're happy with them or whatever. But that's the human learning to squint at the cat versus the dog learning to smile at the human, right? I think maybe cats.
I was experimenting with that this week. I was a little bit high, sitting in my chair, having a nice night, and I was experimenting, trying to communicate with my cat, and it was the eyes. There was nothing to do with the mouth, but I just noticed that the cat would be staring at me, and if I did a slow blink, it would slow blink back. And I didn't realize I was even doing it at the time. I was just like fucking around with the cat. But that, like between the smile, dog smile, cat's blink, it's, and then this conversation's going all over the place. But back to the like translating with dogs. Like, how do you Like, where's that coming? Where with that knowledge we start learning more and communicating more. So, huh, very interesting.
Well, it'll be one of the magics of AI. I think they're going to help us with that.
Hmm.
Right? Once the researchers can get enough data from whatever the animal is, um, I think the AI is going to be able to help put it together for us and translate it, closer to real time. I don't see why not, because animals communicate at the end of the day. It's
Hmm.
going to be more visual than verbal, of course. And
So
to me,
here's
I
oh,
give
go
it
ahead.
10 years. Yeah, I give it 10 years, and we'll be
I,
talking to our
I think
pets.
it's sooner. That's the thing. I think it's wrapped like revolving so fast. I give it 10 months, but maybe by
Well, the technology will be there in 10 months for sure, if it's not already here.
hmm.
Maybe it's just who puts the money into the collection of data, which, the research. I don't know.
Yeah, who's paying for it? Unless they need to sell more dog food, no one's probably spending a lot of time in that space. So here's one along the same lines, and again with AI and video and translation. So I've been experimenting lately with wearing sunglasses, and I've done a bunch of experiments with that because it was actually suggested to me through my sort of human design world stuff. But the guy had said like you might want to consider wearing sunglasses, and at the time I didn't really know what it meant, but now a year later, I through my experiments I kind of know what he meant. So one, um, so apparently we have it's either 77,000 or 144,000 doppelgangers. It doesn't matter; both numbers are massive. So this whole idea of you have a doppelganger, but it's because we look at the face, and I think there's 23 or 27 data points on the face that we look at, and so you only need like 2/3 of them to think it's the same person. So it'd be like, I saw you last week, but you would have been wearing a hat. So it got rid of enough of it that the brain still went, that's Brian. So we have actually a massive number of doppelgangers. So that was interesting, and I was exploring and playing with that. And of course, with AI being able to detect people and video stuff, but with sunglasses too. Apparently, people can tell if your smile towards them is sincere based on something to do with the eyes. It's some like your eyes actually give away whether that your smile is sincere. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I did a bunch of experiments. I'd go for a walk on the street, and I'd be walking on the street. Cars are coming towards me, people coming towards me, and I would smile at them. But I didn't have a reason to smile, so it was technically an insincere smile. It was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like that kind of smile. Nothing, just robots going by. I put on sunglasses and do the same smile, and because I can now also I can be looking ahead, but I'm not looking at them, but they can't tell. I got this average smile on my face. They're beaming as they drive by. Some are waving at me like they know me. It is really weird. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
and it's because they can't tell the eyes. So that I guess they're just guessing, like, oh, this guy must know me. That's a big smile. I should return it or something. I encourage you to try that. Go down the street, try it with sunglasses on, sunglasses off, maintain the same smile, and just watch people's behavior. I don't know if it's just for me. I feel like that would be semi-universal, but there's a lot of information that comes from the face that is about recognition, about your state and your attitude, and then but you can mask it with something as simple as sunglasses. So
So now most of those data points, were they around the eyes? Is that what it was?
I
Is that
never
why?
looked that deep. That's your job as a deep researcher. I'm leaving that task with you. For me, it was like probably a YouTube video, and it made me go down. I just went down a little rabbit hole, and I was like, okay, I got as much information as I want for now to try my experiments. So, but I think it was either 23 or 27 data points, but you only need 2/3 of them to believe that you've seen the same person. Because as soon as one of those regions on your face changes, it's like same guy, and it won't. So, and what's
I,
go ahead.
I believe it because I get people that walk up to me all the time. They're like, "I know you. You're, Bob or whatever." I'm like, sure, whatever.
Mhm.
Call me
Well, and
whatever
the
you want.
beard, it takes away a couple data points. So you're probably going to look like more people by having a beard than if you didn't. Does that make sense? Like by the time you put a
Right.
hat on, sunglasses, and a beard, you look like because you've just taken away
You're
so
with.
many things. So there's just really nothing left.
Yeah,
That's why you're not going to catch a guy that walks into a bank wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. Like they're really down to like, are you the same height? And then of course some guys wear lifts when they rob banks. Like there's all sorts of things that criminals have known
true.
for years that they just don't look like anybody, right? So
Well, there was that big, what was it? It was a Costco robbery or something. I think back late '90s, early 2000s or something. It was quite a while back in Nanaimo, up island, and the guy showed up. There was an armored car coming out of the. I think it was the Costco. Maybe it was something else, but there's a guy coming out from the armored car. He's got the cash. A dude walks up to him with a mechanic's smock from BC Ferries, pulls out a machine gun. It's like, drop the loot, get in the vehicle kind of thing, right? Like whatever. Robs the armored car right there, gets in another vehicle, drives away. They never found him.
mhm.
Everybody saw this guy. So they interviewed everybody, right? Oh, what did he look like? Well, he had this BC Ferries smock, mechanic smock. What did he look like? Well, he had this BC Ferries. Like,
Yeah.
no, everybody saw him. Nobody knows what he looks like, right?
Mhm.
And I guess he had the vehicle that he left in. It was somebody else's vehicle that he took for a test drive.
Oh, really?
And they were just like, sure, okay, whatever. And what do you look like? Oh yeah, it's BC Ferries. It was the weirdest thing, right? So yeah, all those data points somehow were gone. Maybe he had a fake mustache or something, or whatever. But yeah, everybody saw him. Nobody could identify him.
Yeah, like none of us are generally aware of what's going on. When I think about IT security and like the number of times people have talked about firewalls and security encryption and stuff, but like the easiest way to break into a building is just ask another human being to help you. So the simplest hack was walk up to a building holding 4 Starbucks in one of those brown things, have a fake proximity card on your hip, so now your hands are full. So you go up to the door and you're like going like this with your hip. Someone else comes along, sees that, and goes, "Oh, I'll get that for you." Now you're in the first door. And so the hack was, by the end of it, you only had one coffee left because you used the coffees as part of your ruse to get to the top floor of the building. So the next one is you spilled it somewhere and people came rushing up. Oh my god! And you just, oh, I'm so embarrassed. And meanwhile you leave them to clean up, and then off you go with your 2 coffees and you go to the next part of the hack, right? And all the while they probably just remember it was some guy with coffees. So now they're going to go to the security cameras, and if you're smart, you're not looking like who you say you are, and you're not. There's just a couple
Yeah,
things, and then I think you can probably get away with anything, actually, despite all the technologies. So
you're right. Yeah,
and
see,
everybody seems to notice.
I've seen it happen. I watched a guy walk out of a store with a big screen TV, and he got one of the staff to help him because it was difficult to carry. And the staffer took him all the way out to his car, helped him put it in the trunk, and then he got busted. But the staffer was just like, "What do you mean?" Helped him out to
Yeah,
the
like
car.
yeah, you get the help. Okay, so you just made me think of a story that's not really related, but I'm going to tell it anyways because it's just flashback after 8 years, but I think it's kind of funny. We need to buy, and these tables have lived in our family for years. But those big folding tables, the big white ones where you can fold them in half, and they're a pain in the ass. But we needed one for a family gathering. And so I went to, at the time it was Zeller's, I think, and we bought one of these tables. And the guy helps us take it out to the parking lot, but he's huffing and heaving and like stressing. And I'm like, come on, dude, this table isn't like that big. But he loads it into the car and we drive home. There was 5 tables inside the box. He didn't even think to take one of them out. He gave us 5 tables. So, and but all the while, he never thought to ask. I never thought to ask because I just thought, oh, it's a lot of packing for a table. Why would it? Why would it just be in a smaller box, right? And so I don't know. That just made me think of like, and he never went. Like at some point, he probably realized I just gave them 5 tables. And now I personally would have given the 4 back. My grandmother, who's not here anymore, is like, no, I've been screwed around enough times. I'm keeping the tables. Screw sellers. So the tables stayed in our business or in our family, right? So that's not on me. But But yeah, sure. And every gathering, there's like we bring the tables. They come
Enough
from four
tables,
different families, right? Everyone got one, and then the tables
right?
converge at Christmas, where we create this giant 23-person Christmas table. So
Sure.
that's funny. But yeah, that guy had no idea. Probably, possibly never even realized he did it because how often was he moving those tables? And how long does someone stay working at Zellers as a stock boy? Probably not a long time. So the lesson of that, no one learned that lesson. And Zellers is
Right.
good. So
Sure. Sure. It comes out in the inventory somewhere,
that's right.
right? They're just like, oh, we're missing some tables. Oh well, part of the write off.
Yeah, and it would
But
be written off, right? Not even worth investigating for the $60 it cost them. So
yeah, probably not. Yeah. It's interesting how how little we know, how little we're aware of, right? Like our minds are really myopic.
mhm.
We have very little capacity, really, which is an interesting thing because we think of ourselves as being very aware and globally aware, universally aware of things, but it's such a small proportion of it's like we are in the universe, right? We're just these little specks of dust
Mhm.
on this massive globe floating in even a more massive thing, right? So I think of our awareness is also quite limited as well.
Mhm.
And just because we don't have we don't have the interface, we don't have the tools. I remember Elon Musk was talking to someone, and they were talking about um, the integration of machine and human. And he said, well, we already are. It's just that it's very slow, right?
Mhm.
And he picks up his phone or whatever. He's like, it's at the speed of your thumb. That's how. And they were talking about the thing he's doing with the brain. He's trying to integrate um,
Neuralink, yeah.
Neuralink or whatever.
Mhm.
He's like, we've already got Neuralink. It's just with your thumb. That's how fast that it integrates, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and he's right. Yeah, it's super. We have a lot of limits. We've got more limits than as humans would like to admit to. But
Neuralink is a whole interesting conversation. Have you seen the video that they? Because it's got to be 3 years old now, of the monkey sipping on the banana smoothie and playing pong, and how they show the controller and he's using it, and every time he does pong correctly, he gets a slurp of banana, and then they've disconnected it, and he's just using his hand, thinking he's controlling it, but because he's got the Neuralink thing, they figured out what signals make it go up and down, and then the last scene is just he's just playing pong with his brain, and it's, it's just playing, and that was 3 years ago with a monkey, and I don't know. I find a lot of people seem to be really afraid of what that means, but like their intention behind that is the first thing is to shut off depression for people and or help people reconnect their brain to their legs, right? The idea is rejoin those circuits. Everyone's like, "Oh no, it's mind control," and like at least with where he's coming from, that's not the intent. There may be others that do that, and that's the concern is who works at that company and goes, oh, I got a great idea. Let's go try this in this industry or something, right? But I don't. If we worry about that, we'll go crazy. So if you've never seen that video, that's super super interesting, and it's like old. It's probably 3 years old now, 2 years old. So
yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of interesting stuff around that. I know there was a study in Brazil where they took three different monkeys in different rooms, and the monkeys didn't know each other and this kind of thing. And they all hooked them up, and they had to do check or they what was it? It was like ping pong or something.
mhm.
They were doing something where they had to control the dots or whatever it was. And with one monkey, the monkey could easily control the dots as they moved around. And then they got a second monkey, and they had opposing objectives, right? So one monkey would try to move it another way, another monkey would try to move it one way, and they ultimately had to get the thing in the goal or whatever it was to get their banana treat.
Mhm.
But because they're different in different areas, different rooms, working towards the same objective but with different priorities, you'd think they'd be all over the place, right? They're actually able to synchronize themselves and get to the banana,
Hmm.
which is kind of crazy. So they added a third one, same thing. which is super interesting because it's like how can these three monkeys who don't know each other, in case maybe they talk and say, hey George, I'm we're going for the banana, so whatever you do, just sort of don't, and I'm going to lead it. They can't even do that if that was possible. So you have monkeys that don't know each other in different rooms, all competing against each other for the same goal, and they're able to synchronize. And so it's kind of a fascinating thought of how our brains, or how advanced our systems might be, or interconnected in ways that we don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
However that works.
Well, I've been really reading it up on and getting into like telepathy, and like there's a fellow I saw it just a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what podcast it was on, but he was a Russian scientist that used to work for the KGB and is now, and then worked with the Russian space program. And he was just like matter of factly, scientifically saying, "Oh yeah, we use telepathy to send signals to people and stuff." And it wasn't like woo. It was like, no, follow on the science right there. Just this is how you do it. And it was just so matter of fact. And yeah, I gotta find that. I'll send that your way. I think you'd find it very interesting. It was a super
Sure. Yeah,
cool
yeah.
conversation. Yeah.
Well, it's Einstein's spooky action at a distance, right? Is quantum, has to do with quantum theory, because physics is physics, right? There's laws that things sort of all fall in the same direction. But with quantum, those things don't apply, and so you can have an observation of something at here, and you can have the same thing somewhere else, and they instantly respond to each other faster than the speed of light, which in physics is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we know and do is based on standard physics, but yet we know that we can have these atoms that respond at the exact same time despite the speed of light, faster than the speed of light. What the hell is that, right? And so and this is where the whole, I'm not super up on like quantum computing or anything, but this is the kind of thing where they can code break things, because like, well, we're just going to bypass all the codes and go straight to the thing and adjust it in real time without the constraint of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, I don't know how they do it, to bend space time or something, but there's some really crazy stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's already understood. So it doesn't surprise me if something like telepathy is possible.
Oh, 100%. The word quantum, I almost want you to, because I don't think I know how to define what that word actually means. I almost want to go look it up later, like, because quantum physics is of interest to me in a bunch of areas. I've been exploring something called quantum jumping, which is basically self hypnosis and pulling information out of my subconscious during a 10-minute like meditation. And I've had some really interesting quantum jumping experiences where I'll just get in such a state of rest that I'm listening to my body, and I will give myself, and the whole idea is it's guiding through you're standing by yourself in the future, and your future self is giving you advice. And a few times it has served me really well. Like one time I basically caught a narcissist, like a person that was working with me for me. And all of a sudden that was like, you need to ask this person some questions, and here's some questions to ask them. Within a week, they were gone out of the business, out of my life, and disconnected. And it was that cold. And during that questioning, it was during a Zoom call. Um, I won't say he or she, but they just changed. It was like their eyes went black, and it was like, oh, the jig is up, and they were gone. Like they disconnected from me first to not, but all I did was ask some questions, and then when I started digging later, I was like, whoo, thanks subconscious. Yep. So yeah, it's something you might enjoy or be interested in. So quantum jumping, it was Bert Goldman. He was called the American Monk. I think he died about 5 years ago, but he was famous for like at age 70 developed a new kind of photography style, and also was all of a sudden a recording artist as a singer. And he was like learning all these skills, but he was doing it through this quantum jumping meditation and tapping into his subconscious and stuff. It's really very interesting. I
I
think
think so.
Mind Valley bought like his program, so it's just one of the things that they've got in there. So
Well,
yeah,
that's, it goes back to that idea that we really don't know much,
yeah,
right?
we did nothing.
Yeah, I mean, because there's so much out there that we can't, we don't have the capacity for. That's it.
Hmm.
And as much capacity as we do have, we're we're still stuck in the physical world. And what's that connection to that quantum world or that multiverse, or however they put it. But and it's all, so I'm just talking crap because it's all beyond me. Those guys, like, I love physics. I'm interested in quantum theory, but I mean, you listen to these physicists, and I have no idea. It's all garbly goop, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
But I think to your credit and power is you're open to it. Because I think the danger is when people are like, no, these are the laws of physics. Like that's just it. But like the people that these heroes that gave us these laws were working with information they had at the time, and they're only their experiments. So there's a lot of danger in being certain about things and being like, that's it. We don't need to learn more in that space. Let's move on to talking to dogs. Right?
yeah.
So
Well, then we're talking about science at this point, right? Like, science is a continuation. It's not settled. It can never be settled,
mhm.
right? Because we just can never really know. And I think that's where these, yeah, superheroes of the past and present, future, whatever, um, really relied on creativity. It goes back to creativity. It wasn't about being right. It wasn't about having the perfect formula or being sure on anything. It's really about what we didn't know, which
Mhm.
is science. It's like, okay, well, we add a little puzzle piece to something and say, well, this is objectively, which we know thanks to physicists, that there is no objectivity.
Mhm.
And actually, that comes from, it's called the Wilbur's friend experiment, I think. Something like this, Wilbur's friend experiment. And it goes back a couple decades, and it's really about making an observation from 2 points of the same thing and coming up with a different result,
Mhm. Okay.
right? And so, one friend does this, one friend does that. They're looking at the same thing. And there were some Italian physicists that they actually were able, and this is a few years ago now, they were actually able to create a very precise experiment to actually test that at a molecular level, right? And so they took their atom or whatever, and they had the two testing devices, and they observed the same atom from two different locations with exact machinery, with all the same setups, calibration stuff, and they found different results of the
Mhm.
exact same I think proton or whatever it was they were looking at. And the conclusion is that there is no objectivity. As soon as you observe something, it's different than any other observation.
Hmm.
And so we think about, right? And so that applies when we think, well, and in our current time where, follow the science and hold on.
Mhm.
you, Even if you observe, 2 + 2, we agree that it's 4, but it's not really.
Mhm.
It's not actually 4, right?
Mhm.
We're going to agree for simplicity's sake that it is, and we'll work with that. And for the most part, we'll get along in our lives.
Yeah, so we have a framework, basically. Yeah.
We got a framework in which not to perish, right?
Yeah.
Basically. So there's a level of chaos that underlies everything, and we just can't know. So, which is super awesome, I think. I think that's the
So
coolest thing, right?
uh, I think is one of the experiments you're referring to. I think it's called the double slit experiment, which is this. Yeah. So I remember going down that path a bit and being like, I don't understand this, but yep, for whatever reason, it makes sense, but I don't understand. And then while you were talking there earlier, I just was kept picturing Neil deGrasse Tyson and watching his interactions lately because he's a very intelligent man and he's got some great thinking. But lately, he's just angry. It seems like he's basically because people are starting to challenge things where he's certain. And I think it's now just his ego on display. Like he's struggling with, I am known for this. I'm super smart. I'm the smartest guy in the room. But people are questioning things and he doesn't have answers for it. And it'll be interesting to watch his career over the next 5 years because I have a feeling he's going to implode somehow based on just watching. So,
I totally agree. I actually was going to say something about him because
oh
I
yeah,
think he's blowing it. I think he's
mm-hmm.
blowing it, honestly, because he thinks he knows.
What's the word? It's not sincerity. Yeah, his ego is out of balance. Like he's been inflated and been pumped up, and he's starting to believe it, and that's a real danger because he's stopped being curious, I think, and is more complacent. So
Right. Well, he's a personality and he has a certain amount of power, and I think he's probably losing empathy for, what we don't know, basically.
yeah,
So, but yeah, I agree. He talks about subjects that he shouldn't be talking about,
mm-hmm.
as though he knows,
Yeah,
and
he likes the sound of his own voice at this point, I think, and that's don't do that in a big public display. That you will come crashing down. The American way is to push people up, but when you're at the top, they're like, "Okay, you fucker, time for you to come down." And they just call you right back down, right? So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, put a new fresh star up there.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and that's the thing, so I've got a book called Scale by a guy, Jeffrey West. Anyways, he's a nuclear physicist or something like this, and he talks about physicists basically, and they're fairly sure of themselves because they have their own language, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mathematics is its own language, and they use it in a very particular way. And in fact, when they speak to each other, they speak using this language of mathematics, because there's no language that you can articulate without it. You can articulate something mathematically, and I don't have a good example because I'm not that good, but you can articulate things mathematically that you can't actually speak of.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this sort of special power that they've learned, and they think that because they work on the very big and the very small, that they understand how everything works.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jeffrey West, he works at or was at the time of the authoring the book, at the Santa Fe Institute, New Mexico. And he was dealing with scale. And so the very small and the very big. And he realized that in physics, they've sort of done everything, or pretty much everything that they can do, all the way down to the God particle and the boson, Higgs boson and stuff like this. And the supersymmetry and stuff. And they know how things work really well. And they're like, everybody else is an idiot. But he realized, well, there's not much left to do, as far as really interesting stuff. And there's a lot of physicists around. So he starts looking around and he finds biology. And so he starts working on issues of scale and with some biologists. And you think these guys are, he's up there on the chalkboard trying to explain stuff to them. And they're just like, that doesn't really work. And he's like, you guys are idiots, right? All these people are idiots. He's, one PhD to another kind of thing, right? And he's like, they don't understand anything. And then he starts to listen to them. And he's like, and they're just like, this other stuff is crazy. Like biology and this human messiness is a totally different realm. It doesn't always make sense, right? It does stuff that you just can't predict very well. And he started to realize how little he understood about stuff. And, there's things that are going on, like one of the interesting things is Zipf's law, which is super common. So, for example, you can take any text, take any Bible in any religion in any language, or any textbook or any novel or anything, and you can apply Zipf's law to it, meaning that if you do a word count, this goes back to the Wordle or the word cloud thing. If you do a word count, the most numerous word in any book, it'll be a 1-for-1. The second most will be a 1-to-2. The third most will be a 1-to-3. The fourth most will be a 1-to-4. And it'll just scale like this, like linearly, right? Mm-hmm. Which is crazy. How is it that we can talk and produce words that scale like that? Like, why isn't it, some kind of bell curve or something like that. Like what I don't know what's going on that nature produces in all language of any kind in any culture this perfect scaling effect. Now that can apply to everything else. You can determine based on, for example, and I think this is Gall's law, which is related. These are power laws of distribution. Gall's law. You can determine how much sidewalk space there is in a city based on its population. So this city has 1 million, that city has 2 million, this city has this much sidewalk space, that city has that much sidewalk space. Why is that? It's scaling laws.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they always work like that? Like if you map them all out, it's like, it's so close, naturally speaking. Which is just a weird kind of phenomenon that occurs that I don't understand, and I've never had anyone explain it well enough. And West, I don't know that he necessarily explained it because I can't remember it, but just there's just really fascinating things that are occurring all around us all the time that's worth being curious about, right? Because we don't know.
100%. Coming back like that and Neil deGrasse Tyson, when you were as you were talking about it, I heard this phrase a couple weeks ago, and it turned out to be totally true in my world. So this term of spiritual arrogance, of people being more healed than another, right? It's like almost a race. But I think there's scientific arrogance, like when you say like they got their own language. And coming back to AI, it's the kind of the great equalizer because, and so here's the other thing. I have come to realize that I was always trying to learn new things, but it's just in case learning, like just in case I need this stuff. And so those that go to school and study hard in these places, they're doing just in case learning. I have let that go, and it's partly because I've gotten to know my type and I'm a multi-passionate, and I'll just never learn what I need. So it's just in time learning, right? ChatGPT is like the ultimate just in time learning. Like I need to know, like give me a list of 4 things so I can sound intelligent in the next meeting, and then I can just go and drive these people that spent 20 years of their career crazy because I'll just sound like them, right? So it's like this huge, like just like
Equalizer.
you or believed we're all kind of equal if we know how to ask questions to the same thing that can do all the research for us in seconds. And the more you know what to ask, the better the answers will be. So it's really about like how good are you at asking questions. Like actually it's funny, but even last night I was like, I need to spend more time on Chat GPT, but it wasn't that I need to learn new things. It's like I need to keep improving my questioning so I get to the point where every time I use it, it's that fast of a tool versus, oh shit, I got to go through this whole like figure out what I'm asking process, right? Like I think that is that's the school should be taught in school at this point is and that's really what I guess school's for, is learning how to learn. It's learning how to remain curious and staying curious, right? So
yeah, curiosity is huge. I think, particularly for senior leaders. A senior leader that stops being curious has stopped being a leader. That's in some way, right? They've lost a huge potential capacity when they stop. And to be honest, many of them have never been curious. Luck, endowment, privilege, these things all come into play.
Sure. Some just were gifted this life, this experience through nepotism or whatever. And then we just follow these people blindly like lemmings or sheep. And now we can start asking questions and being like, so what he said, does that make sense? Hey, ChatGPT, just give me a da-da-da-da-da. That doesn't really align. Okay. See you, buddy. And just watch them crash. Like I think we're going to see. There's so many things that this conversation just touched on. One is overpopulation. It's not a problem. It's a population decline no matter what. Robots, we need them because people just need to do like we're not short of jobs yet, but it'll be the point where thank goodness we have these things. I don't know. I think I can tell I'm shifting the topic over. I want to talk about the Tesla bot because it's definitely I think that's where my brain is going, but it kind of aligns with all this stuff, right? Because
let me know. I don't know anything about it.
Okay, so almost 2 years ago now, Elon marched out this this at the time it was just a person in a costume, but they were like, Tesla is working on the Tesla bot. His name right now, or its name is Optimus, and it's supposed to be 5'10", can't run more than 5 miles an hour. Because and basically his point is like, hey humans, don't be scared. We're not building military robots. We're building something that you could tackle or outrun, but is here to do the jobs we don't want to do, like washing dishes. This thing could just wash dishes all day, but it also will do amazing jobs like fire rescue. If someone falls off the side of a cliff, you're putting like 3 firefighters in danger for 3 hours as they shimmy down to go get this moron that didn't, read the manual on how to use his straps. So you put 3 lives at risk, right? So these bots will just go down, collect the human, drag them back up. So they're going to do some really useful jobs that are for our benefit. So they're not the enemy; they're here to help us. And then, like, just think of the data too, because they're going to be these bots are going to be walking around the streets, getting us mapping data with the cameras and everything, going through stairwells in hotels, going through hallways in hotels. So they're here to help us as well. Like the one scenario, I don't think I dreamed this up. I feel like I heard this, but like in the future, if someone like an Amber Alert, which in my opinion is basically just a fear mongering tool by the government, not actually helpful because we're all now looking for a Honda Civic and we're all distracted. None of us are right. So, but with AI, it could be like this child was last seen with this picture. And with AI, because these bots are walking around all the time and constantly cataloging, it would go, I recognize this hallway from this hotel on this floor in this building because it's seen it before and it can find it in a second. And then they match it up. And then they, from there, within minutes, it sounds like Big Brother, but it actually could, you could find the kid within 3 minutes because, it's actually pieced together.
Triangulate all the data points and they find a path.
And these things are walking around 24/7. Like, so it's like, and people are fighting it because they're worried about their jobs. So it's job security because they're probably not doing anything useful, which is kind of what we talked about before. Like, so just be useful.
They're just walking around looking at stuff, but they're not
Yeah.
reporting anything. So
Yeah. They're not, no one remembers what they saw. I mean, even that, I could talk about hypnosis and how we do actually store that information and can retrieve it based on a story I heard. But yeah, so I'm just super excited by what that means. And so, and this guy, Dave Lee, was talking about, so Tesla electric cars are already crushing everybody everywhere, right? And it's so funny watching all the car companies are now using Tesla's charging network. And I think already one company they've kind of hinted that one company has already agreed to use their full self-driving and employ it to their cars. So like Tesla's just driving everything. So there's electric cars, which are already like the point of electric cars being cheaper has already been hit now. And the total cost of ownership is cheaper. But then there's a full self-driving, which is supposed to be 10 times the industry that Tesla is, like the cars, because of robo-taxis and how it's going to change. We're not going to have driveways anymore because you won't need a car to store it. But the actual 10 times that is the bot. So these bots are 10 times the opportunity of full self-driving based on the data they collect, the jobs they replace. And of course, so that's why people are saying, well, we need to tax the robots. But like, this is so asinine. The government's going to tax robots. So that just basically tells us that we don't need the government anymore. Like, we'll just be like really probably what's going to happen is Tesla will be our world political state. Yep.
This is a current complaint that Elon Musk has a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
He's negotiating with Putin directly, supplying resources to Ukraine, and he's right in the mix of he's getting us to space and back.
Yep.
In a way that nobody ever could. So it's interesting, right?
And everything he's doing is about putting 1 million people on Mars. So even the bot, every time I think about it, the bot is about, they don't want to send meat sacks to Mars because a couple of them are not coming back. And then that'll be the program over. But if you send a 5'10" robot that sits in the same seats and tests the comfort and goes over there, but it's actually working 18 hours a day, so long as it's got its battery charged. So that's what's going to happen is these bots are going there. And then like Starlink is all because they're testing how to build an internet and telecommunications system because they need to deploy that on Mars. So like everything that he does is not about world domination. That's why he inspires me, is that he's viewing 100 years from now and trying to pull us towards the future, and we're all kicking and screaming and moaning and how much money he has. And meanwhile, he's like that dude could buy 5 cruise ships tomorrow. He could buy 500 cruise ships tomorrow and just take all his friends on a cruise for the next 5 years and go, fuck all you guys. I'm tired of this shit. You're all you do is shit on me every day, all day. I'm just going to go on the best cruise of all time. And he doesn't. He gets up and solves problems.
Well, it's probably he said that he has Asperger's. He's on the spectrum, right? He's got Asperger's, which means that he doesn't necessarily understand very well social interaction,
Mhm.
right? And social needs, which I think is a blessing for that guy, because all the nonsense that comes at him, it probably does not hurt him as much as it does people that aren't on the spectrum. And so I think he's able to sort of waltz past it in some regard,
Yeah.
and just go, okay, these guys are, this is what they're doing, without going, oh, they've done this to me. He can just be like, well, okay, I know I have to respond or not, right? And so it might be some kind of buffer that allows them to not be overly influenced by all the crabs in the pot trying to drag him back down, right?
Well, and he's so strategic. Yeah, I think that probably helps. But I've seen him in interviews get incredibly emotional when he just talks about people dumping on him, especially NASA, right? And just they fought him tooth and nail, right? And what SpaceX is doing compared to the giant, massive shit that NASA is. Like, you're gonna launch one rocket in 18 months, and he's gonna have it down to every 2 hours within another year. It's just and 1,000th of the people and bullshit and bureaucracy and taxes. It's asinine. But I think growing up in South Africa, that guy, I think it sounds like a couple times, he was near death with bullying and stuff, and he developed an outer shell. The other thing too is he sold all his homes in California, but he did it, and he said he was getting rid of attack vectors. People were attacking him based on owning 6 homes. So he's like, well, fuck you, I'm going to have none. I'll just have none. I'm just going to go live in a trailer in Texas, and
I
I'll
know
take
it,
right?
Sure.
And even so much so, that one of the homes, so I guess he had 6 homes, and really he just bought all the homes around one in the middle. It wasn't one in Hawaii, one in the lazy the lazy millionaires do, we'll call them. He bought all these homes around his, so that it was like a fortress, like a moat to his house, so he had privacy. Well, one of those homes was owned by Gene Hackman, and apparently it has cupboards that are sideways and secret. Gene Hackman was weird. And so he didn't want the house to be demolished when he sold it. So he ended up selling it. In the end, he said, if you buy it, you're not allowed to change it. If you buy it, you're signing a contract. And in the end, apparently he sold it to, I think, one of Gene Hackman's, or Gene Wilder, one of Gene Wilder's kids. But the kid didn't have enough money. So he actually loaned the kid the money with a 10-year payback cycle or something. So he actually loaned the money to the person, bought the house under the provision that they don't wreck their father or uncle's legacy. I mean, come on. That's pretty cool, right? And yet everyone's just like, oh, he should be curing world hunger. Why do you fucking cure it? He's curing oil and gas. He's the guy's kind of busy.
Let him do what he's doing. Yeah. Because he's doing a great job at it. He's doing more than the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
right.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
he's got an ecosystem where all the parts tend to fit together, and he's producing results.
Mm-hmm.
Let him go at it. It's a great American story, is what it is. Which, of course, is surprising that they're against him so much, particularly the car companies. Ford was a great American story, but for the most part, they haven't done anything interesting. A lot of American companies haven't done any, not like Musk has with his companies.
Yeah.
And they give him such a hard time, yet he's producing what the United States, is really, throughout its short history, has been known for: American innovation. Mm-hmm. Getting stuff done, making things bigger than they can, right? Which is amazing, and he gets a hard time for it. I don't know. I just say let the guy see how far he can go. He'll run himself off a cliff at some point, nature provides a cliff to everyone.
Yeah.
but let's see how fast he can go by the time he hits it, right? Like, he's producing results. It's amazing. He'll get us to Mars.
I have
I'm
a
sure.
like the only stock I have left. I have a bit of Tesla stock left, and not a lot, but but the only instruction I have for my Edward Jones guy is if Elon dies or is killed, like call me because I want to sell because it will literally plummet for a while. I know it'll be fine. It'll come right back, but you might as well sell before watching because there will be no confidence in it, despite the fact that he left the place better than he found it. The people will realize very quickly. And yeah, so that's I don't know what I'm telling this other than that it's basically like call me. I'm gonna like sell it all. I'm gonna wait a week and then I'm gonna start buying. you know, and
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he can't have those things functioning the way they do without having good people in place
yeah,
doing good work, right? It's one guy can't do it all.
no,
So, but one guy can drive a purpose and a meaning
hmm
and a vision, right? Which he's got in spades. I mean, I see on social media, people are slamming him as not being a good leader and this and that, right? I mean, that's my area of expertise is leadership, and I always think, well, whoever accused him of being a great leader in the first place? Just
hmm
because he's wealthy, he's supposed to be a great leader. Just because he's done well, he's supposed to be a great leader. It doesn't make for leadership.
no,
What makes him a great leader, I wouldn't say a great leader. What makes him a good leader is that he has a vision and a purpose, and he
hmm
continually communicates it.
hmm
He can screw up everything else, but it's aspirational, and it gives people, good, smart people, want to attach themselves to that, right?
hmm
They want to say, you know what, that is amazing vision. We're going to get to Mars of all things, or we're gonna bore tunnels under cities, or we're gonna produce electrified automatic driving cars, or like those are really big things, and he wants he influences people to be inspired by that.
hmm
He can do everything else wrong. He can be a bad manager, bad boss, but if he has that, he's done a good job at a portion of what a leader is. So I don't know. People
Well,
are.
you said it earlier, like he's learned to ignore, or I think you said it, like he's learned to ignore everybody. Like the ability that he can tune them out and go, like, I'm being pulled by my purpose, and off I go. The whole Twitter thing, like, even my wife's just like, oh, he said this, and it was like, yeah, he's just playing with people. He's literally toying with them. And then so someone was like, oh, he did a poll and said that he would step down as CEO if everyone agreed. And then they were like, "Oh," and he didn't do that. Well, he did. He just simply took on a new title. So, and he waited 2 months because it took time to find someone. You think he's not still able to call the shots at Twitter? Like, but that's what he promised was, I will step down as CEO if you ask me to. So he did, and within 2 months. But really, you know, he's people. I don't know.
He's
It's
no dummy, that's for sure.
yeah. So.
But there's not a lot of other. I don't see a lot of other, very successful in terms of what they're producing. Bezos and Gates and Buffett and the rest. No slouches. They've done a good job at sort of a single-minded process, but they're not humanists like he is.
Mhm.
They don't have grand visions that are much bigger. Selling a lot of stuff on Amazon is not, I don't know, it's not very inspiring,
Mhm.
right? Google owning all the information or whatever. Okay, well, it's a big jump right there, but who cares? And what does that do for humanity? So I think there's very few people on the planet right now that I'm aware of that have that particular path or trajectory. So
Mhm.
super interesting.
Yeah. Well, we got to wrap up here, but I'll leave you. I feel like I've shared this with you before, and if not, you can go Google it later. But so we're talking about Musk, and then you brought up Amazon and so Bezos, right? So Bezos has a rocket company, and from what I understand, like Musk wants 1 million people on Mars in 100 years. That's the pull. That's the because we're gonna fuck up this planet, so we got to be a multi-planetary species, is what he keeps saying. And I guess Bezos' plan is to turn Earth into a terrarium. So he's got the Wall-E vision, like the Pixar movie, right? All the humans in space, and we fucked up Earth so bad, we'll come back in 100 years and visit it. We just need Earth to heal. And but like, if you want to understand Bezos, you just need to look at the shape of his rockets and the Amazon Prime logo, and you can see what his motivation is. So, so like, take a look at Bezos's rockets, and you'll see a dick and balls. And if you look at the Prime logo, you'll see a circumcised penis, and you'll never look at it again. And it'll be like, that's just he's the ultimate dude with a pickup truck with the truck nuts hanging off the back, but he's doing it with technology, right? So,
Sure.
so
Well, and he's done well, but ultimately he's competing with Musk, but Musk isn't competing with him.
exactly.
And so he will always be playing catch up, and he'll never quite get there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'll
All right,
be
buddy.
that.
That was fun.
Okay, man. Thanks for the chat.
All right, man. See ya.